WordPress and website hosting is a pretty complex topic. It used to be, back in the 90s when I started trying to create websites and put them up on the internet. I was fascinated as a visual artist. I was a sculpture major and did a lot of pen and ink drawings in college and growing up. I was fascinated when the internet was new, about putting websites up so that the world could view them. It's still so interesting to me and it feels really good to put up a fresh new WordPress site, to spend some time playing with designs like themes and builders and page builders, and kind of put together some ideas. And then you take that live at a WordPress or website host, and all of a sudden it's visible to the world if they can find it, right? You can share that with others. Being fascinated with that in the 90s, I started with static websites. All websites were what you'd call static websites at the beginning. I was using a visual building tool, though, just like I do to this day within WordPress, with the Divi visual builder and the Gutenberg and the block editor. Now, those are visual editors. And I've never really gone and made a website from scratch with code like HTML and CSS code. And to me, that's a smart move, because leveraging what other people have done as far as WordPress themes, and in the past, a software like Adobe Go Live, which turned into Adobe Dreamweaver, which still exists to make static sites in a visual way. That's where I started, and I was fascinated. My roommate and I at the time in Breckenridge, Colorado, just over the Continental Divide from where I am now, we started a little business called siteassist.net, making websites for people we knew in ski school. I've spent 25 years teaching snowboarding and skiing to people at the ski resort. And I'm now since retired for 5 years from that, with my lifetime season pass for my wife, Erica, and I, which is really awesome. But anyway, I remember times, sitting in our little condo with my roommate, Jeff, and creating websites with Adobe Go Live, and figuring out at a company called bulkregister.net that we could register domain names for people. We could put websites that we created with Adobe Go Live up on those hosting areas. And then we could pay for that, in bulk, you might say. And then for each of our customers, they would pay us a little bit. And all of a sudden, our hosting became free. And then our hosting turned into a profitable endeavor. And we ran that business together for several years until Jeff moved away from the mountains, finally out to Oregon. His wife became a doctor. And in any case, I kept on with website building and making sites for clients. In 2006, I found WordPress. And that's the reason I'm saying all this, is that there kind of is a big difference between a static website and a dynamic website. And I'm going to talk right now. I'm just going to illustrate. If you look at the screen right now, this is kind of the system that happens when we have a WordPress website, and really how it works in the background. This is just a good foundational piece of knowledge that you guys should understand if you don't already, if you're looking to host and serve clients with websites. So if you look over here on the right, this is the user's browser, right? Chrome or Safari if you're on a Mac, or used to be Internet Explorer, Microsoft Edge. The browser's open on your computer. If your computer has Wi-Fi, you're connected to the internet, you'll be able to type in a domain URL into your browser. And that domain URL goes to some other places out on the internet. The Internic domain name registry is connected to companies like Cloudflare and GoDaddy, where you'd register your domain names. And the domain name system called DNS stands for domain name system. It translates the domain, human understandable URLs into IP addresses. IP addresses, there's things you may have seen, there's a set of 4, 2 or 3 digit numbers separated by a dot in between. An IP address is really the real location of the server. Now, a server, this is where the website would be located. A server is actually a physical piece of hardware, a computer that's connected with a very fast connection to the internet, and is probably sitting in an industrial building, in an industrial park, on server racks, black boxes stacked on each other, on racks with probably an air-conditioned environment, keeping it very cool. You might have, a cooling floor in the whole thing, but you need a server in order to host a website. And so when you buy space or hosting and a hosting account with a hosting company, what you're doing is you're basically renting a section of a server. You can get a server that's all your own. And if you just have one site on one server, that's called a dedicated server. And what we generally work with, in all the hosting companies, including small hosts where you can get very inexpensive hosting, where you call that shared hosting. I'll talk about the different types of hosting. And as I indicated before, the 3 types of hosting that are really out there. There's shared hosting. You're basically sharing the space on one server with a number of different websites, each of these being a website. Your website over here, all these shared websites on this server might have the same IP address. And what happens is when you put your domain URL into the browser, or Google points you to a domain URL, like I said, it translates into the IP address, and that IP address is connected to a particular server. And now there's software on the server. Software on the server is necessary so that when that browser goes to that IP address and it says, hey, I'm looking for, yourname.com, the server might have hundreds or 20s or thousands of websites on it, and it has to pick out the one that you're looking for. And so software on the server, that's what the hosting companies are really providing you. That provides that system. And so moving around the circle, the server. Let's talk about WordPress in particular as compared to a static website. WordPress is a dynamic website generator. It generates HTML and CSS. That's what the browser reads and can put out as, pictures and text and a layout with columns. The language that browsers use is, HTML, hypertext markup language, plus CSS is what designs that and makes it look good. And that's called cascading style sheets. And that's a style, styling the content. So the content in the HTML is called markup, and the CSS is called a style sheet. And those added together equal a website. And so what happens is this web page is created, and that web page is then delivered over to the browser, like I've indicated here over this arrow, the HTML and CSS. But what happens here at the hosting server? This is just important to know as background, and then we'll get on to kind of the meat of different hosting types. And for your particular situation, I'd love for you to come out in the end with an idea of what kind of hosting would be best for your situation. And so looking at that, on the server, we have kind of 2 things going on at the same time with the way WordPress works. And WordPress is a CMS. Of course, in this whole world, there are a lot of acronyms, right? That stand for HTML, CSS. An IP address is kind of an acronym. It's a series of numbers. So I just said another acronym, a CMS. CMS stands for a content management system. And the reason WordPress has, one of the reasons that it's blown up into running almost half of all the websites on the entire internet, is because it is a free and open source piece of software that enables an easy way to create a website paired with a content management system. You could think of WordPress as kind of 2 things. You have the front end of the website, that's what people see, and then you have the back end of the website, that is the WordPress dashboard, and where all the data and the content lives. And so the way WordPress works is it has 2 parts here. And so we'll talk about files There's, WordPress is actually just a series, excuse me, WordPress is just a series of PHP and JavaScript files, all in a row. And the server is able to read PHP and JavaScript and then translate it into HTML. And now it's not just PHP and JavaScript, however. Inside of the files, you also have your theme and your plugins that are within your WordPress site. Those are also built with PHP and JavaScript programming languages, okay? And so you've got the files. Those are actual, they're an actual computer file, like a Word document is the file name .doc for document, right? This, JS files, their JavaScript files are .js. PHP is another programming language. Those files are something .php. And so the server is able to read those. However, the best thing about WordPress and what makes it a dynamic website generator is that you keep the design and the actual files separate from what's called a database, the content of the website. And so one type of database language is called MySQL or MySQL. Again, it is a free and open source piece of software that is used for managing data. It basically makes a huge spreadsheet that's readable by a computer so that the server, again, it can take the files and it can add them to the database, and then it combines them together to create the web page. Okay, that was kind of complicated and longer than I thought that would take to go through and look at, how WordPress works and, really how the internet works. It used to be, as I said, this is a dynamic website. A static website would just kind of eliminate this part right here, and you would create HTML and CSS as a file. You upload that to a server yourself, and then that's readable by the browser, but we have this server system with the two different parts that make WordPress what it is. And it really enables us as non-programmers to leverage the work of other people and customize themes and plugins, designs and page builders in WordPress for our own needs. And we can master that as a skill